Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Reading in the Dark. Byron here. This video is going to be kind of a look back at a book that I read last year, The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. Now, I actually started making a review for this video a very long time ago, and I ended up filming for so long because I had so much to say that I just could not edit it. It was way too much. I tried for weeks and it has not been finished all of this time, and I just thought, you know what, let me just organize my thoughts a little bit better and try this again. So I'm gonna try it again. So as you may or may not recall, I read The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn for Thriller-A-Thon last year, and as Thriller-A-Thon is coming up soon, I thought maybe now would be a good time to finally get this review up. Okay, so this is a book that has been very, 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 very popular, very hyped. It was a nominee on the Goodreads Reader's Choice Awards for Best Thriller of the Year. It did not win, but it was one of the finalists, and I believe this is a book that is one of the few books, like, happens every 10 years or so, where there's a bidding war for the rights to publish a book. And it gets published for something like $1 million or something, concurrently with a movie deal, and that book then goes on to be the #1 New York Times best-selling novel. And that's what happened with Woman in the Window. It went on to be #1, and it's only every once in a while does that happen with a debut novel. So this book was very, very hyped even before it was released, and a lot of people have been talking about it, and there's a movie coming out, and I didn't, love it. I liked it fine, and I had some gripes with it that I don't hear anybody else on BookTube or very many people really in the bookternet really addressing at all. And because I was frustrated by that, I thought I would make a little video. This isn't exactly like a rant video, I hope. I don't want it to come across that way because those videos are not fun to watch any more than they would be fun to make. But this is going to be sort of an in-depth look at The Woman in the Window. If you're game, then here we go. So, and also what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this book sort of preemptively without any spoilers, and then when it comes time that I just can't talk about it any longer without spoilers, I will let you know, and then I will put a big thing on the screen. You will not be able to miss it that says spoilers, and then if you haven't read the book yet, you can stop watching at that point. So, The Woman in the Window is written by A.J. Finn, and A.J. Finn, as you may or may not be aware, is a pseudonym for the then book editor at William Morrow named Dan Mallory, who apparently says that he chose the pseudonym of A.J. Finn because he thought, he was looking for something that would look good on the small screen. That's according to an article in The New Yorker, which I'll talk about a little bit later. The Woman in the Window is a story of an agoraphobic woman named Anna Fox who lives alone in a large 4-story brownstone in New York City, who has taken to drinking quite a bit and taking a lot of the medication that she's been prescribed for her anxiety after having suffered a trauma. And she spends a lot of time watching her new neighbors from her window, and she believes that she witnesses a murder, but no one will believe her because she is sort of a shut-in. Nobody really knows her, and she drinks too much. A.J. Finn has also said in a few interviews that he has been diagnosed, or he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and had a bout of agoraphobia. I think he then later, according to the New Yorker article, he then later retracted that and said that he did not actually have agoraphobia. In any case, that is what inspired him once he was kind of back to life and feeling good again to write this book. The Woman in the Window is inspired by classic film noir thrillers, Hitchcock movies like Rear Window. So in terms of my first impressions, this book was good. It was entertaining to me. It was a page turner. I will say that the major reveal, which takes place towards the end of this book, was not a surprise to me. But that's just me. Thrillers are like that. Sometimes, the big reveal will work for you, and sometimes it will not, depending on what you've already seen or read or whatever that's similar, maybe. So for me, it didn't really surprise me at all. I saw it coming, but I'm not gonna knock the book for that, because again, that's what thrillers are like. Sometimes you win some, you lose some. The book is very well written. I think the prose is nice, and one of the good things that he does that I really like in this is there's a sort of a recurring theme of Anna thinking things in her head when she's talking to people. This happens a few times with the Detective Little, that she deals with, where she thinks a response to something that he said in her head, and then he responds to it. So then you realize that actually, and she realizes, oh, she actually did say that out loud. It helps to kind of give you the impression that she can't always tell the difference between what's going on in her head that is imagined and what is real. Finn's writing of her internal monologue when she's really drunk and intoxicated felt really authentic. She sort of personifies objects like the big grandfather clock in her home. And it's just kind of funny, and it has a realistic feeling to it. I also really enjoy the way that A.J. Finn sort of wove this fabric of lines and memories of scenes from the Hitchcock movies and things like that she's watching throughout the book from beginning to end. There's like italicized quotes and lines from movies, and it sort of helps to, again, sort of set up the idea that her mind is really kind of a patchwork of things that are here, things that are not here, things that are real, things that are not. So just, overall, this story was an easy read. It was really, entertaining, and it was a page turner, and it's broken up into a lot of really short chapters. In fact, there are 100 chapters, exactly 100, and I assume that was on purpose. Some of them feel artificially truncated just to make the chapter count that high, but it's 430 pages long, so it does sort of give you a nice sense of your reading progress, I guess. So I enjoyed the read. But all of that said, there is a problem. This book is extremely popular, very, very successful. The story of its publication is sort of legendary now, and yet, in my opinion, this book is very unoriginal. So A.J. Finn says that this book is very much inspired by the classic Hitchcock film Rear Window, which was directed by Alfred Hitchcock and starred James Stewart and Grace Kelly. Rear Window is number 48 on the AFI, listing of, the greatest films of all time. That movie had a screenplay by John Michael Hayes, and it was based on a short story by a man named Cornell Woolrich, which was originally published in the Dime Detective magazine in 1942, in February 1942, and the story was called It Had to Be Murder. It's a very classic film. A lot of people have seen it. I've seen it many times myself. But considering how many people apparently think The Woman in the Window is extremely original and unique, apparently not that many people have seen Rear Window after all. So here's the deal. Rear Window, okay? It's a story of L.B. or Jeff Jeffries, who is a professional photographer. He is injured while on a shoot. He breaks his leg, and he becomes confined to his New York City apartment with a big cast on his leg in a wheelchair. And because he starts going stir crazy, he starts watching through the windows through the lens of his cameras and binoculars his neighbors across the courtyard, thinks he witnesses a murder, but can't get anyone to believe him because they think he's just going stir crazy. The Woman in the Window is about an amateur photographer who was a woman named Anna Fox, who suffers a trauma and develops extreme anxiety, is put on lots of medication, develops agoraphobia, and can't leave her New York City apartment, begins watching her neighbors through the lens of her camera, thinks that she witnesses a murder but can't convince anyone that it's true because they think she's going stir crazy and because she's mentally ill and drinks too much. So aside from the fact that she's a woman and she's agoraphobic instead of having a broken leg, this is the same story, right? Yes, they're the same story, you guys. It's the same thing. Some elements in the book that are unique are the killer's backstory, Anna's tragic backstory, the fact that she is a woman, and the fact that instead of having a broken leg, she has agoraphobia. But those small, unique elements in this book are really irrelevant because the blurb is what gets people reading this book. The setup, which is so heavily borrowed from Rear Window, is what gets people to buy the book, to turn the pages in to read the book and talk about the book. If it weren't for that main setup, this book would not have necessarily been compelling to anyone. Now, A.J. Finn acknowledges that this book is inspired by Rear Window. He even mentions that Anna's watching Rear Window at one point in the book, which was clever, but to me sort of felt like that's like the nod that you have to do. If you're meta enough to mention the thing that you're ripping off, then somehow that excuses the fact that you're ripping it off. And I'm sorry, I don't really think that's the case, AJ. And, there's a movie adaptation coming out of this book. They're currently filming it, or they just recently finished filming it, starring Amy Adams and Gary Oldman and Julianne Moore. When it comes out, I am almost positive that most of the reviewers, whether it's good or bad or whatever, they're going to refer to it as a Rear Window remake because that's what it is. Especially now that it's going to be a movie. It's a good book. It's fine, but it's no more original than Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf was original, another film adaptation remake of Rear Window. So I kind of can't wait for the movie to come out because I'm very curious what people are going to say. So why the mass delusion? Why is it just me? Why are so many people falling all over themselves to just give this book 4.5 stars, 5 stars, to just talk about how amazing it is? Why are we as a society banding together to believe that there are new works in the world that are so unique and fascinating and magical, when in fact they're just rehashes of things that came before? Is it that so many people just don't know Rear Window? Am I being a jerk? I don't know. I don't get it. Look, if you have not seen Rear Window, and you have not read this book yet, and you would like to, and you don't want it spoiled for you, again, let me just reiterate, I enjoyed the book. The Woman in the Window is a highly derivative work, and it is a bit ham-fisted in its portrayal of law enforcement officers refusing to believe or listen to the complaints of the protagonist, which also makes it a little cliche. Something I haven't gotten to yet is that it also features some very problematic portrayals of female characters and people with mental illness, in addition to its manipulative use and employment of the depiction of mental illnesses. I liked it fine. It's not awful. It's not life-changing. It's well-written on the sentence level. And you may very well find yourself totally surprised by the twists. It's fine. 3 stars. Now, if you do not want the rest of the book spoiled for you, go away now, because the spoilers are coming, and they're going to be coming in at full speed. So, spoiler alert. I'm about to put a thing on the screen so that you'll know for sure. Spoilers begin in just a moment. Okay, so if you're still here, I'm going to assume you've read the book or you don't care, and the spoilers are coming. So, the first major problem I have with this book is its portrayal of female characters. So the main investigator on the case is named Little, Detective Little, and he's a man. But his partner is a woman, and her name is Val Norelli. And she's just this awful woman. And they're doing good cop, bad cop. So she's bad cop, of course. This woman, in her bad cop role, is extremely insensitive to the point of being almost ignorant. You almost get the impression she's never heard of agoraphobia before. And what makes it worse is that the male cop is the nice one, to the point that in his, superiority, niceness-wise, he physically silences Norelli twice with his hand towards the end, because Anna Fox is upset, and his partner is the worst, and so he silences her with her hand because he doesn't want her to talk, which is gross. Moving on to the killer's mother. She was a heroin addict who apparently sold her body for the money to keep up her heroin habit. He called her a heroin whore, quote, a crack whore except for heroin. Thanks, Ethan. The killer's mother is a sympathetic character, right? She's cleaned herself up. She's clean. She's sober. She's not using. She's an artist. She's very friendly. She's very nice to Anna. She comes over. They play chess. She's lovely. We like her. But this story and these characters do not allow her to repent for her mistakes. Jane Russell, the stepmother to Ethan, will not allow Ethan to see his biological mother, even though she's clearly clean now. Alistair, his father, will not either. And worse than that, she is then later basically blamed for his derangement and for turning him into a homicidal sociopath. So basically, this woman, having gone through addiction and not having been able to be a mother to her son because of her addiction, is blamed, therefore, for making him a killer. Moving on to Anna, the main character, the title character. So this is a woman who lost her husband and her daughter. They're dead. We find that out. And basically what we are taught by the book is that this is all her own fault. Because of her infidelity, her husband and her daughter are dead. We've got the female cop who's rude and insensitive to the point of ignorance. We've got the stepmother who won't let the child see his biological mother even though he says he wants to. We've got the woman who is responsible for, she had an affair and as a result killed her husband and her daughter. And we have the mother of the child who was a drug addict and apparently a whore and is therefore, irredeemable and blamed for his mental illness or derangement or homicidal tendencies. So do we see a thread here, the female characters versus the male characters? Yeah. The second major problem I have with this book is A.J. Finn's use, I was going to say depiction of, but really his use of mental illness. He uses mental illness as a tool for storytelling and as a way of manipulating the story to be more mysterious. You know, it's a tool for obfuscation of the facts so that things won't be clear right away. It's not used in good faith. It's not a nuanced discussion of mental illness. If you look at Anna, okay, so she is mentally ill. She has anxiety, she's on medication, she has agoraphobia, she's afraid to leave her house. And she takes too much of her medication and she mixes it up and she takes it with alcohol despite knowing she's not supposed to and being told not to do so. She's an alcoholic, she's drunk all the time, she orders crates of wine. And it bothers me that people with mental illness have to once again be portrayed as alcoholics and as not managing their symptoms and their illness well. In this book, that is like a cheap writer's ploy for crafting an unreliable narrator, something that this book in particular definitely depends upon to work. But it's also really a cliche. Not all mentally ill people are a mess. There is a connection between mental illness and drinking. People want to escape. But this is also a damaging stereotype, and it's counterproductive. I saw a comment from a user on bookofthemonth.com. As someone who actually suffers from anxiety and panic attacks, I found the descriptions of Anna's agoraphobia and anxiety to be pretty accurate. I do think that the woman who drinks too much, which she wrote in all capital letters, trope, is overdone now, though, and I think the book could have easily done the unreliable narrator thing without it, especially because having extreme anxiety can sometimes affect things like perception and memory. So I think that's a very valuable insight, and I agree. I think piling the anxiety, depression, drinking, medication, and agoraphobia all on at the same time was overkill. Finn just really lays it all on with a trowel when it comes to depicting Anna as an unreliable narrator. And again, it's because he needs her to be one in order for the book to work. A.J. Finn's attitude about mental illness is echoed also in the way that he writes the character of Ethan, the killer, the young man. I have to tell you, he says, I've met a lot of psychologists, and you're the first one who hasn't diagnosed me with a personality disorder. His eyebrows lift. I guess you're not the world's best shrink. So, and I wrote, my note in my Kindle was not a fan of mental illness as a stand-in for evil. And truly, it is such an overdone and damaging trope. And I get it, this is a thriller, but it's just another example of A.J. Finn wielding the tool of mental illness in terms of storytelling like a sledgehammer. So in terms of A.J. Finn, you know, it's a pseudonym for Dan Mallory, and, you know, I'm not going to get deep into the recent Dan Mallory, you know, Mallory Gate situation, but if, you know, there is an article listed in the description below from the New Yorker. Turns out he's kind of a pathological liar. It came to light that he has lied about many things in his career and his life, including having had brain cancer. He never had brain cancer. The idea that his mother passed away from cancer, she's alive and well. The person who wrote the article went and talked to her. And just big things, small things. He's lied about a lot of things. And, you know, I don't want to get into a big discussion about Dan Mallory. I understand that, you know, people who are habitual liars like that isn't its own mental illness. And I'm not here to shame. I'm not here to say awful, nasty, negative things about this man. I don't know him, and that's not what this channel is for. But I will say that it's not a stretch for me to imagine that someone who is comfortable utilizing mental illness in a fictional version of their own lives to improve their career might also be comfortable utilizing mental illness in a book like this in such a blunt and sort of ramshackle, slipshod way. I really do feel like the portrayal of mental illness in this book might be on the surface accurate, but that on a deeper level, it is there to sort of cloak his unoriginality in this shroud of perceived authenticity that really maybe it doesn't actually earn, which is something he's demonstrated a willingness to do in his own life. So I'm going to leave that there. I don't want to say anything more about his situation, but I think it's interesting in context that is all coming to light right now. Nonetheless, it wouldn't matter if that article had come out or not. I don't like the way mental illness is portrayed in this book. So the third major problem that I have with this book centers around Anna Fox, the main character, and her backstory. Anna, as a cheating wife, is portrayed as the root cause of all of the problems and all of the tragedies that befall her family. Her affair led to the separation between her and her husband and the divorced proceedings. They still go on the vacation they were planning for. It's around Christmas time, into the cabin in the mountains, and it's a very snowy night. And then, because things are tense, they have an argument, and her husband wants to tell their daughter the truth. They tell their daughter the truth. The daughter gets upset. So because of that, then they have to leave and they have to go back home. Then the man who works at the lodge tells them that it's really bad weather and he wouldn't recommend driving in this weather at night. And really, really implausibly, ridiculously, they decide to go anyway. And while they're driving along the windy roads down the mountain in the blizzard at night, upset, her phone rings. And who is it but the man she had the affair with? Why is he calling her? We don't find out. It's not really important. The point is, it's a very blunt metaphor. Her affair is reaching into the car and calling her in this pivotal moment with her family. She wants to answer it, or the husband answers it for her, and then she drops it, and then she can't get to it, and so then she reaches down to get it while she's driving around a curve in the blizzard at nighttime in the winter with her family during this crisis, and swerves and goes through the guardrail and flies off the cliff, and her husband and her daughter die. So it's just a very ridiculous chain of events. I mean, the fact that the phone rang and it had to be the man she had the affair with, I mean, come on. It is a neon sign. This message could not be more clear. Her affair killed her family. I get it, AJ Finn. Philandering wives are terrible people, but like, really? Are we going to be that blunt? Are you going to hit us over the head with this concept? Because frankly, that is just ridiculous. They never would have left in that weather. It's implausible, and it really frustrated me. I am just really bothered by the fact that the tragedy that befalls her family from beginning to end is tied up in a neat little bow as being her fault and attributable to her affair. This is slut-shaming for 430 pages. Giving in to the temptation towards infidelity will lead to greater and greater problems. And, you know, it's moralizing and judgmental, and I don't like it. It's icky. Don't cheat on your husbands now because everyone will die. That's how ridiculous it read to me. And of course, Anna blames herself for the entire book. She's lost everything, which is why she's depressed and addicted and agoraphobic. And she lost it all because she was an unfaithful wife. She says, I'm going to quote the book, she says, internal damage, they told me, compounded by exposure. There was nothing you could have done differently. There's so much I could have done differently. No, Anna, because we know she's not talking about the driving. She's talking about the fact that she had the affair that put all these events in motion. That's what she's talking about. And that has nothing to do with it. No one in this book ever sits her down and says, Anna, you did a really dumb thing. Bad. Bad, Anna. You had an affair. This is bad. You're going to lose your husband because of this. This is, you know, you really messed up. But that didn't kill them. You're not responsible for their deaths. You had a car accident, you know. No one ever does that. No one says that. And why? Because AJ Finn is in charge of the book, and AJ Finn wants us to know that that is why. This book is filled with lots of really cleverly disguised slut-shaming. This is Anna talking to her husband in the hallway of the hotel that night before they decide to drive off into the snow and die. I thought of you as the girl next door, he said. I braced myself for more. But right now, I can hardly look at you. So why was it written this way? Here's what's interesting to me. This is the first time I have seen a take on the Rear Window situation where the protagonist is female. And AJ Finn needed her as a female to be responsible for her own downfall. Whereas in Rear Window, LB was a hapless victim of his own bravado and bravery and awesomeness as a photographer. He leaped out to take a really great photo, and he broke his leg in the line of duty as a photographer. So he's only injured because of how awesome he is. She is, and that's why he's in his apartment. Whereas she's isolated in her apartment because of her infidelity. So whether consciously or on purpose or not. In this book, A.J. Finn really does a lot to amplify some very harmful female stereotypes. We've got the drug addict, we've got the sad, lonely alcoholic, we've got the slut, we've got the whore, and we've got the bitch. And in fact, the female cop that I'm referring to is even referred to as wearing something when she comes in. Anna describes her as a bitch on wheels, or says that she's got the bitch on wheels thing going on because she's being bad cop. It's just, when you take it all together, you've got all of these female characters that are, dismissive and rude and insensitive to other women. You've got the woman who won't let the kid see, his biological mother. You've got the mother who's portrayed as being the addict and the whore. And then you've got all the nice men to contrast them with. I'm not saying that this represents who A.J. Finn is, and I'm not saying that was his message that was intended, but I put the book down and I thought, wow, women are pretty terrible, huh? That's the impression the book gave me, and I just don't like it. While it is well written on the sentence level, The Woman in the Window showcases unlikable and unflattering tropes about women and stereotypes about women and mental illness that are highly derogatory and not worthy of praise. And all of that is wrapped up in a highly unoriginal plot that is at worst plagiarism, at least a waste of everybody's time, and definitely a waste of Finn's obvious talent. And that unoriginality and tropiness is one of the reasons that people look down on and belittle commercial fiction. So all in all, this novel's really great qualities, like the atmosphere and the good writing, are really just balanced out by all of the nastiness, like the tropes and the manipulative, cheap employment of mental illness. So I sort of have two reviews for this book. My first impression of reading this book was like a 4-star read, like it was fun and it was enjoyable and it wasn't the most original thing, but it was fine. But in the bigger picture, when I'm thinking about what kinds of authors I want to support and what kinds of books I want to support with my dollars, this book is really more 2.5 or 3 stars. And I'm giving it 3 stars because it is enjoyable. It's not a book that I would say, ugh, that book is terrible. It's not. So it's a 3-star book because I just don't want to support this kind of writing. I choose to support authors with positive, hopeful portrayals of women, nuanced portrayals and discussions of mental illness, and originality. Because at the end of the day, the thing that I keep coming back to is, this is just Rear Window. That said, one of the most frustrating things about this book is the quality of A.J. Finn's writing, because it's good. I just think it would be nice if A.J. Finn or Dan Mallory could spend less time trying to pull the wool over our eyes and more time writing something amazing. Maybe his next novel, which Simon & Schuster just actually recently announced, will be going forward with publication as previously planned. It's a novel about a thriller writer who plots revenge after an interviewer uncovers a dark secret past, which I find to be frighteningly meta and more than a little disturbing. Maybe that novel will be amazing, but here's the thing, I probably won't read it, because the fact is, A.J. Finn is not a good enough writer to make me overlook the lack of respect I now have for Dan Mallory. So, that is my review and discussion, in-depth discussion of The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. 3 stars to this book. So, do you agree with what I said about this book? Do you disagree with what I said about this book? Are you enraged by what I said? Well, if you're enraged, maybe don't comment. But if you just have a thought, then please feel free to comment. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below. If you loved this video and you just can't wait to see more content like this, you can subscribe to my channel. That would be awesome. And you can hit that bell icon, and I guess that notifies you when I post something new so you don't miss out on it. And thank you so much for being here once again for this bookish conversation. And until next time, I will be here in the dark reading. Bye, guys.